aside and a shift to one other thing that I wanted to talk about today was some upcoming changes to the enlisted promotion system, which I know is near and dear to your heart, Sergeant Major, but something that affects all of us throughout the Guard structure. Is why did the structure need to change? What wasn't working, and how are we seeing the evolution of change, and how are we actually implementing that change within our soldiers, both with those that are looking to promote and with the first line supervisors that are helping them through?
Okay, well, so for 10 or 15 years ago, we went to a centralized promotion system where we had centralized boards that would meet once a year and evaluate every soldier in a career field in particular ranks and rank them 1 to N for an order of merit list. And it was really based on their record, and there was a fair amount of subjectivity in that. And then the other piece is those boards would work off of a baseline. So there had to be some guidance for the board to left to right limits, and so to try to make equitable scoring. So the trouble was that we recognized was every year that baseline would get adjusted individually at the board level. So it was a moving target for all of our soldiers. They had really no clear idea. Generally I got to shoot well. I got to do well on my PT test. I need to have good evals. So what does the board really look at? What do they value? So we've talked about it for a long time, and last year was the first year that we implemented a statewide baseline that doesn't change. Okay, so there's 7 hard score categories in there that we look at, like performance, potential, and schooling, look at various other major areas, and they're ranked on a scale. And what we've done is, the scale goes 2 to 8, and a 5, we tried to adjust the scoring. So that's a soldier who does everything that they're supposed to do, but maybe not anymore, and not any less. And then we looked at data, historical data of our populations at each rank, and tried to adjust the scoring from 2 to 6 that matched our formation. Bottom line, we're grading our soldiers against their peers within the Ohio National Guard.
And how does that weight differentiate between, so you may have some soldiers that are really good at soldiering, but maybe don't have a whole lot of that after duty education. And then on the other side, okay, you see some that have emphasized more. How are we avoiding having a heavy emphasis on one side rather than the other in order for us to have a well-rounded NCO corps?
So there's that's part of the program is that there's 7 categories. So we nobody's strong in all 7 categories, and was why we kind of designed it that way. Another major change that's happening this year is, so I indicated that we've been doing centralized boards for a long time. The E4 population out there, the specialists and corporals that are looking to be sergeants, and the sergeants that are aspiring to be staff sergeants, we're moving to a semi-centralized process. So what that means is there won't be a central board at the state level that looks at their records every year. They're going to be assessed on administrative points. So there's chart in the regulation in AR 600-A-19 that awards a certain amount of points for various scoring areas. So weapons qualification, if you have so many hits, 40 hits out of 40, you get a certain score. ACFT, civilian education, military education, all those areas. So it really takes subjectivity out of it. And it really puts the control in the soldiers' hands then of how they can move up. And then the last change that's going to be implemented in next year's cycle will be battalion level appearance boards for those E4s and those E5s. So they will go to be like an old school promotion board and active duty. We used to have to appear, if you want to be a sergeant, you would appear in front of a board and get asked questions, and they'd look at your record and they'd assess your appearance and everything. And the sergeant major at the battalion level was the the gateway to the OML, to the list. When you had to, and I think that's something we've lost over the years, and particularly in the Guard, is that experience of having the appearance board. I could tell you, in 1987, I went to my E5 board. Master Sergeant Major Cobb from the Ranger Battalion was the president, and four first sergeants, two of which are Ranger Hall of Famers. And they drilled me and drilled me, and I left out of the room sweating, thinking, oh my God. And I passed the board, and I thought, there's not a CEO in the world that I can't stand in front of an interview now. And I thought that the value of having that experience was really good. It gave me a lot of confidence moving forward.
I would just say too, to add to that, throughout my career in the National Guard, what I felt in our board processes was lacking was transparency. So soldiers would go before a board, whether it was on the officer side or the enlisted side, and had no idea what that baseline was, because each board was selecting their baseline at the time of the board. So a soldier could potentially rise or drop and have no idea why, and may have improved themselves from the last board, but saw a decline in their points or whatever the case may be. So we wanted to get ahead of that and publish it. So we publish it in advance, so every soldier knows before going into that board cycle what the board is looking at as a baseline, and then they can kind of look at their career and figure out where they need to improve. So whether that's getting evaluations cleaned up, or whether that's taking another APFT or ACFT now, they can do those things to improve their standing.
Absolutely. And understanding that enlisted promotion doesn't happen in a vacuum. We're also there with our warrant officers and with our officers as well that are helping us through the system. How are we now leveraging, or how well are we successfully leveraging the Warrant Officer Corps and the Officer Corps to make sure that as these changes are hitting the roads, that we can have success?
I would say that from a warrant officer perspective, the Sergeant Major talked about how the first line leader is responsible for training the soldiers, the junior graded soldiers. Warrant officers serve in that capacity as well, at least on the technical side, like signal equipment, that kind of thing. So I know I've had the opportunity to work with a number of warrant officers over the years, and a lot of the warrant officers, they don't actually absorb the responsibility of the enlisted promotion system or anything of that nature. That's usually ran by the NCOs. However, they serve as like a safety net for that. When they see stuff going off rails, they can kind of nudge it back and say, hey, we're going to miss a deadline here. We need to get this stuff completed. So I know when I was on deployment, I worked in the signal section, and two of the signal warrant officers there helped kind of shepherd that process to make sure that people's packets were in to brigade. So that way we didn't have people missing promotion opportunities. Now, one thing I would add to his redesign of the enlisted promotion system is that a strong NCO Corps builds a strong warrant officer Corps. Those could be targeted, specific targets for people who want to be warrant officers, especially if they have the right mindset for that. There's a philosophy to being a warrant officer, and that is you want to know a lot about a narrow field. And so if we have people that like to do that, keep reps on technical equipment, those are the people that we go after to be warrant officers. So
insert recruiting warrant officer banner.
That's exactly right.
But then we also have to think about the balance that we have. Like, hey, we need good warrant officers just as much as we need great NCOs and senior NCOs. So how hard is it to not have to fight at the end of the table between you guys to be able to get those critical resources? Because, hey, we could have great NCOs, great senior NCOs, in certain capacity. Sergeant Major's going to fight to the death for a lot of those, but we also see their utility as chiefs. How can we temper both sides and basically be able to keep both sides happy with retention, with our numbers, as well as making sure that we are not only maintaining the mission, but growing the mission?
Well, I say that, we have a respected kind of competition. I've already had conversations with Sergeant Major. My intent is not to pull somebody out that is in line for a senior enlisted position, because we need good senior enlisted people like Sergeant Majors. They need good officers. So there is a little healthy competition for that. But at the end of the day, I think we're all in agreement
that it's what is best for the individual soldier is what matters. You know, he might want somebody to be a sergeant major, but maybe that person was like, hey, I don't really want to be a sergeant major. I want to be a warrant, which is totally understandable. But, you know, at the end of the day, that's how people that want to be sergeant majors. And I've tried to recruit some people on the warrant officer side, and they're like, no, I want to be a sergeant major. I'm like, good for you. I'm glad, because, you know, we need good sergeant majors as well. And if we have a culture that everyone in the organization is trying to enable every single soldier to be their best self, and are close, and they've communicated with their team, and they know what they want, and they know what drives them, it makes those decisions a lot easier, because we already know which direction they want to go. And you're going to have people that are extremely technical every day and love that technical side. And you have people that really desire to lead formations at different levels. And you can be a leader as a warrant officer as well. It's just a very different dynamic. You're maybe a section leader as a warrant officer. You might be a commander at certain detachments, but primarily to lead organizations, you're going to be a senior NCO or an officer. And so if everyone gets to know their people well and truly communicates and understands what their desires are, then it makes it very easy for us to chart that path to get them to that successful conclusion.